Our topic is going to be water, energy, and food, the equation of shared sustainability. I'd like to welcome His Excellency Dr. Abdulla Al Jarwan, the Chairman of the Abu Dhabi Department of Energy, as well as Anacláudia Rossbach, the Executive Director of UN Habitat. Welcome. We also have Mr. Alvaro Lario, President of the International Fund for Agriculture Development. Hello, sir. And Mark Smith, Director General of the International Water Management Institute. So we have a lot to get through, and it's really interesting. Water, energy, and food inextricably tied. I mean, we talk about food security, we worry about water security, top of the agenda in some ways. But what I'm seeing at a global level right now is a scramble for critical minerals, a scramble to try and industrialize economies a lot more. You know, there's a different narrative, and I think we understand from the previous conversation, we were talking about let's not focus on the noise, but industrial policy is changing dramatically. And I want to take a step back because water and food security is something that is very serious and it's affecting a lot of countries. Climate change is impacting our realities on water. And I wonder if the scramble for critical minerals is wrongly placed. We should be scrambling to figure out how we're going to fix the water and food security issues. Dr. Abdulla, I want to start off with you.
First of all, good afternoon. Pleasure to be here. A lot of insightful comments since we started the discussion today.
Yeah.
I took a few myself, and the way, as a practitioner in the field, looking at power, water, energy products in Abu Dhabi, in addition to building an ecosystem that's enabling development, industrialization, and making sure that all the urbanization happens in a very sustainable way. Let me start with a practical positioning of this nexus. I think energy, water, food is an operating system altogether. They cannot be separated. The moment we start challenging the understanding of how interdependent they are, because everyone understands that they are interdependent. I think the challenge is setting the system in such a way that we always focus on one framework that enables the development of energy, because energy security is water security, especially in arid places like the UAE and many other examples, and making sure that this national security will extend to food, because our bottom line here makes a very important demarcation. Without having this integrated strategy that enables the delivery and optimization and efficiency in a single system, we'll start imposing cost on the other segments of the system, giving energy and water. And if I may, I want to give an example of Abu Dhabi. Developing mega-scale projects. When I say mega-scale, let's go to giga-scale, for example, solar project, very cost competitive. Let's assume we have a 1 gigawatt scope for solar development. Turning the solar power into a base load, for lack of a better word, is something that was assumed to be impossible a few months ago, not even a couple of years ago.
I was going to say, it's impossible, isn't it? Is it changed?
Well, it has changed because technology has changed. The simple argument here, for us to develop a supply chain that delivers sustainable water, affordable water, competitive water, we need sustainable energy, affordable energy, and competitive energy. The example of this solar project was simply turned around, and let's focus on the signal, not the noise, as you said earlier. A simple technology breakthrough was in batteries, and the batteries are pragmatic, available, and can be sourced out. It can be branched out to minerals. Although the breakthrough is much bigger, it's how do we practice this change? An example in Abu Dhabi, an example that worked is the RTC, the round-the-clock solar, 1 gigawatt feeding 5 gigawatt project, having a base load available for consumer industries, be it AI and data center analytics, exporting those tokens of AI services that can be provided to the world, made one fact true. The sum of those parts are much greater. The value of those parts are much greater than the sum of the parts. That's the value of the whole. That's what the integration between energy and water, food security as the extra nexus is very much doable by adopting this framework.
That's amazing news. I mean, that's incredible to hear. Anacláudia, I want you to jump in here and I think, and again, I really want to start with the macro picture, and we can set the foundation and kind of move on. With UN Habitat, you guys do incredible work on the ground. We're seeing priorities change, shift, focus, and you're carrying on doing the work that you need to do because you know what the priorities are. What are the challenges that you've seen over the last while? In the past year, where you've seen major changes?
Yeah, I think I would like to bring a little bit the urbanization lens, Eleni.
Yeah.
Because if we look at the world and the part that is mostly urbanized, let's say the Americas, Europe, and so on, the way the metropolitan areas grew, the way these countries urbanized, deeply affected water sources, had great impacts in terms of energy use and also food security. Examples, cities that are facing challenges with fires, with droughts, with floodings, you name it. If we look at the part of the world that is increasingly urbanizing in the next couple of decades, and here I'm talking about almost 2 billion people that are moving to cities in Africa, in Southeast Asia, we are talking about an immense amount of pressure on land and urban systems, right? And we might generate even higher impact on that front as well. So 3 elements to highlight. I think the first element is urban plans, territorial plans, how we dealt with the territories in the past and how we are going to deal in the future, the importance of respecting the ecological function of the land, for example, understanding that urban expansion has limits, right? The second aspect is how we are dealing with the peri-urban areas and the rural-urban links. It's extremely important that we build strong links between the urban areas and the rural areas. We have been working together on that front to guarantee food security and value chain, the supply chain there. And the third aspect is housing.
Yeah.
And why housing? Because actually, if we look at the key driver of urbanization, it's housing. Exactly. Gated communities, informal settlements, public housing projects, you name it, right?
Yeah. It's so important. I mean, actually, I was on a panel and it was titled, What is the Infrastructure of the Future? And, I was thinking about it must be, data centers. And I had a panelist saying, no, actually, it's housing because we have such a shortage of housing. And it really got me. But I'm sure, everyone else must saying water or energy. There's so many different answers to this. But as you say, it's a nexus. They are all, integrated and super, super important. Alvaro, I want you to jump in here. And I want you to talk to me about your challenge in getting people to work together to focus on this nexus and why it's integrated and where you're seeing gaps in the way that banks and even governments are funding these 3 elements.
Well, thank you very much for having us. Clearly, we heard also from our panelist fellow colleagues on the industrialization, the higher perhaps use of technology and energy, urbanization. My intervention will probably be more on the, I would say, even more challenging, not because UAE, which is doing a fantastic job, I would say, with aquaponics and hydroponics and technology and really less than 1% of arable land, limited rainfall. So I think they are solving it through technology in an extraordinary way. At the same time, we have also perhaps the least developed countries, also rural areas where poverty is, and how can we attract investments there, and where is that nexus? We had a couple of years ago, actually a very interesting investment program of more than 20 billion launched in Egypt, which was the nexus of water, food, and energy during COP27. And IFAD is leading on the food side, but there's a lot of elements that are very interesting also on the link with water and energy. So when we're talking about water in these rural areas, least developed countries, what type of investment we're talking about? Water tanks, rainwater harvest, soil management, drip irrigation, small-scale irrigation. So all of that is not easy to aggregate and it's not easy to finance. So many times We are seeing a lot of potential at the same time. So I think that's one of the challenges. I mean, solar-powered irrigation could really very much nurture like 1/3 of all crop irrigation in sub-Saharan Africa. It has a tremendous potential. The challenge is how to finance, how to scale it, and how to aggregate it. And then how to govern it, which is also very important. When we're talking about small-scale farmers, you group them into cooperatives, you group them into water associations, user water groups, but then you need also the repair, the maintenance, the pricing, is it pay as you go? So there's a lot of complexity on how to bring all of the finance together, the governance together, and also even how to link it to capacity building and then many of these users being able to understand and make it in an equitable way. So I think the complexity on governance, financing, even capacity building and training is massive. So there needs to be a lot of things coming together. It's just like with food security. We all think that about the big agribusinesses, which have trade finance, which is more or less, they have the commodities, it's easy to finance, but when you aggregate it at that small scale, it's much more complex, and you need a lot of local financial institutions, bigger global value chains connecting to the local. So we know that food systems are complex. When you bring, for example, solar-powered irrigation, you bring energy, you bring water, it becomes even much more complex at that level.
It's so complicated. It really is. Africa has about 60 to 70% of the world's arable land. That is, most of it is not utilized, and that's the reality. Because you've got smallholder farmers, supply chains are really tough. How do you get things across? Logistics are tough. It's water access, it's irrigation, as you say, it's cooling, it's storage, it's all of those things. And it's a stark reality. So thank you so much for mentioning that. Mark, I want you to jump in here. You're, Director General of the International Water Management Institute, and I have a question that's been on my mind for a very long time. And I do like to take a step back and look forward to potential issues that the world could have. And it's been mentioned before. I'm sure you've been asked this before. Is the world at some point going to be fighting over water resources? Is it coming?
I have been asked that one before.
And what was your answer? Has it changed now?
My answer is usually between countries, history tells us unlikely. There's very few examples of wars over water between countries.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more going on between countries. At community level, yes, it's a source of tension, a source of conflict, a source of a driver of breakdown of governance in fragile contexts where water issues and competition over water become the driver for the dynamics of what communities are facing and the decisions people are making. Then it becomes at the center of conflict.
Really interesting. Okay, so let's take it a step forward and look at water management today and whether you feel that countries are doing enough to secure water for the future.
Water's complicated,
yes.
Complex. It connects. We've heard some of the speakers talk about its role in connecting. I want to set up the answer to your question, though, with a slightly different perspective. Water's also, it doesn't have to be a constraint. When we get it right, it's a driver of solutions. We see that in the nexus. Nexus and its complexities we can think of as a constraint because it's hard. It's hard to deal with all these issues. But the example of solar-powered irrigation, actually, if you get solar-powered irrigation lined up with the way the grid is managed in that kind of context where you can connect it to the grid, lined up with access to markets by farmers, then you drive value for farmers, you drive better water efficiency, you drive increased access to energy and all the benefits that brings, including for income. So it's a driver of solutions. So are countries doing enough? Are we doing enough? There are untapped opportunities to leverage that kind of the solutions space for water across sectors, across the multi-sector solutions that the nexus implies that we need, and that stepping up to deliver those untapped solutions is what cooperation amongst countries is all about, and what I think as we look ahead to this year of water, as we're calling it, in 2026, going from Dakar and the preparatory meeting for the UN conference last week through to the conference in Abu Dhabi. That's what we're looking to do, is leverage those untapped solutions. Yeah.
Right. So, Dr. Abdulla, I want you to jump in here. I want to talk desalination. I mean, it's incredible, the technology that helps us live the life that we live in this region. I'm also very aware, and it's not lost on me, that where I live here in Dubai, and frankly in this region, that we have one of the highest per capita consumption of water, right? Speaking of the nexus and looking at desalination, the energy we use, the water that we consume, tell me about the UAE's overall strategy, because I'm sure these numbers are all top of mind for you, and seriously so.
Oh, they are. So desalination is part of the answer. It's not the whole answer.
Yeah.
Before talking demand and shaping demand in such a way that's sustainable, affordable for everyone, for the governments without major reforms, and making sure that we remain competitive not only in the residential sector, but rather in the industrial, the commercial, governmental, and agricultural, because this is how the governments think. They want to think about the whole scope. Let me take one step backward, and let's talk supply in the beginning. There is no water supply without secured energy. There is no drop of water without a watt of power behind it. What we do, and let me give an example maybe in a minute. We have a master plan that serves us the best when it comes to allocating the right optimum water mix that should go to the society, should go to the industrial sector, should go to the commercial sector. Believe it or not, we are targeting rainwater harvesting here in the UAE. We depend in some areas on the right underground water production that can be used in that localized area. We do, of course, do desalination with reverse osmosis, cogeneration, you name it. This is all feeding one big box, which we call the optimum water supply mix that's backed up by the right energy mix, because affordable, sustainable energy will be required to support affordable, reliable, and sustainable water. How do we do it? If I'm to give one example, beyond the optimum supply and the optimum demand, it's shaping the right demand. And we have embarked on a journey a couple of years ago. That's 28 programs targeting the industrial sector, the residential sector, to shape this demand, shape it in a way that we shave off those peaks. Because the governments do not design their systems for the bare minimum requirement. They always make sure that water will be available in all scenarios. And by all scenarios, we mean peak demand. And shaping the peak demand by 10% will optimize more than 18% CapEx and 22% of OpEx. That's proven. That's science. So the bottom line here is, beyond the integrated approach, beyond the demand side management, beyond the supply, it's the consumption behavior in all aspects and all sectors.
Yeah. Well, I moved here from South Africa. You can imagine my delight to not having power outages and water outages consistently, because that was management issues, right? It's a management issue. So you guys are doing an incredible job of management. So let me ask you this, because I think this is important. You guys are, the UAE is looking actively at solar power desalination plants. What percentage do you hope to achieve on renewable energy, and what are you using right now?
Okay. That's great. I would, but just maybe one point, I wouldn't call it that it's a management issue, it's a system issue.
It's a system issue.
Because it's supply, demand, management, technical, innovation. Like I always give an argument. We are not short of capital, we are short of bankable projects because of the lack of the governance system.
Yeah.
Now, on the renewable power, clean energy in Abu Dhabi 10 years ago, and let me give the example of Abu Dhabi, I know the numbers best, but my colleagues can give the number of the UAE. 10 years ago, clean and sustainable power in Abu Dhabi was less than 1%, 10 years ago.
10 years ago, okay.
Today, it's more than 46%, just after 10 years. 5 years from today, it will exceed 60%. On a yearly basis, we are adding 3 gigawatts of solar cost-competitive power to our grid. supported by at least 6 gigawatt per hour of battery storage to make this solar sustainable and to make sure our system is resilient, to have buffer in the energy system to back up any immediate demand of water.
This includes nuclear energy as well.
Oh,
The
yes,
number
renewable
okay.
and clean.
Very encouraging. Okay, Anacláudia, I want you to jump in here, and we're talking about urbanization, the systems, and where the cities can support this rapid urbanization, especially in emerging markets, especially in terms of what we're seeing, even in big cities. What are your biggest concerns about system failures right now? And of course, droughts hitting certain places around the world. I mean, we're seeing this happening. Then you've got water quotas coming in. I mean, we're talking about catastrophic scenarios.
Yeah, indeed. Cities have been affected by climate events heavily all over the globe. Yeah, but in places and regions that I mentioned before that are going through this really dynamic, accelerated urbanization process, this generates really, really high concern. Perhaps, just to deep dive a little bit in some of the aspects that I touched before, urban planning and looking at some practices, because we need to look at what's working also, right? And how cities can also be used as source of innovations to help us to respond to that. For example, Bogota is a city that in the last year and so was highly affected by a drought. Metropolitan growth, unplanned, and affected the water sources of the city. So the new master plan from 2 years ago really puts a clear borderline, in what is the part of the city, and here I'm talking about 30% of the city that houses 70% of the population, and preserving the 70% of the city, of the territory for rural, for food production or for, environmental protection. So there are interesting examples, but going back to housing, Eleni, you're right. We have to build a lot of houses, so we have to max out what we have in terms of vacant, underutilized spaces in cities, the densification possibilities that we have, because if we don't plan for this housing needs, what is going to happen is that cities are going to grow informally, they are going to grow anyhow, and it will affect the food systems, it will put pressure in terms of energy and water.
Alvaro, a lot of people are abandoning agriculture. That's a reality. People who live in rural areas, it's tough. Weather's becoming unpredictable. They don't know when to plant. They don't know when to harvest. That's happening all around the world. I mean, you could put systems in place that could help. I mean, weather patterns and systems to try and read what's going on. How concerned are you about food security as this massive move to urban areas? People want a better life. Agriculture is not easy. Unless you're a commercial farmer, that's great. But if you're not, it's not easy.
I think you said it very well. Actually, the average age of a farmer is 58 around the world. So clearly, there's a lack of young people. But when you bring farming as a business, and you said what we don't want is subsistence farming, we want small-scale production, and it is connected to markets and is able to have a decent livelihood and decent income. So farming needs to be a business. So when you present it, actually, and we have a lot of investments in youth agribusiness hubs, when it's a business where also technology is there, they're much more interested. And food systems is not only production. We always think about the person in the field, but it's about storing, it's about distribution, it's about exporting, and all of that needs also an ecosystem. And that's also for many governments and also multilaterals to support on building it in order to make sure that we are not seeing just farming as the last possibility, but actually a way of really letting people stay where they want to stay, but with something that is economically viable. So that the only way to do that is actually to think about the entire value chain, not only production, and building enterprises, both for on-farm jobs, but also off-farm jobs, and that's the only way forward. In the developed economies, there's also a lot of more possibilities. In many of the least developed countries, like in many sub-Saharan African countries, we're talking about more than half of the population actually devoting their livelihoods to this. So it's better if we really invest for a number of, obviously, reasons, not only moral, but also for stability and avoiding a lot of the conflicts and forced migration that are related to that movement.
Yeah, I mean, and we are seeing conflict and forced migration because of water and food shortages. because of climate change and all of that, the nexus that we talk about. Mark, in terms of breakthroughs, what is that one breakthrough you're waiting for, hoping for, perhaps seeing already, technological, otherwise based, or even policy? You know, policy helps a lot because we're then forced to implement. Sometimes we don't do it properly, but, you know, we're kind of thinking about it. And specifically the water, energy, food equation by 2030, so we achieve our SDGs.
Data.
Interesting.
Data is changing this game. It's changing the possibilities for managing water, and therefore how you do governance, therefore what kinds of policies can be workable and implementable. Because the data and the revolution in water data, which I'll come back to, we can work towards that driving a much more evidence-driven, data-driven, science-backed approach to water management and water governance, and indeed the nexus. The nexus is complex amongst these different sectors, but data will help us manage that better and see through those complexities and understand where are the trade-offs, where are the, as you've been outlining, where are the win-wins that we can get a hold of for moving forward. So data has always been a constraint around water management, and especially in less developed countries. But that is changing fast because of the combination of Earth observation and artificial intelligence and innovations like digital twins, which make not just data more accessible, but the capacity to access that analytical power from institutions at whether that's at community level or through to basin and ministerial level, access the interrogation of that data in ways that are delivering answers in the kind of workable language that people need.
I mean, that's very illuminating, I have to say. You know, I was just thinking as you were speaking, you know, whenever we cover inflation and what inflation is doing, we're like, well, oil prices have gone up, and that's kind of feeding through into prices at the farm gates, and that's kind of making everything else more expensive. Now, this is proof that the nexus is super important. But at the same time, you know, I just wonder, at what point are we going to see, are we maybe already at an inflection point in terms of affordability of water and food and energy, and how are you weighing that up, Mark?
I talked earlier about untapped solutions.
Yeah.
And when we're looking at the nexus, it's really key to be practical, to force ourselves out of being conceptual in the way that we look at it and to be practical. Your comments illustrated that again perfectly. So as we have more data, as we focus on real problems in real places, focus on investment and how to do it, then in those locations we find those inflection points.
Fantastic. Alvaro.
Yeah.
Alvaro, same question to you. Are you concerned, worried?
Well, I think not only myself, I think we know that inflation obviously affects the ones that are most in need, usually in all societies, and I think politicians also are putting it at the top of the agenda. We've seen all over the world, clearly in the case of cost of goods and things like coffee, like chocolate, cocoa, we are all noticing it, and that's usually I say, and this is what always happens, that the ministers of finance and ministers of agriculture come together about after food price shocks and after food crises. This is when it happens, 2018, 2020, 21. Hopefully this will not be the case, but we are all clearly suffering, and I think that's probably in all politicians and all political agendas at the top of the agenda, because like with housing and the cost of food is obviously two of the things that are affecting most populations.
And actually, you know, any inflationary hiccup like that could really cause, you know, a lot of unrest in cities. So your views before we close, Anacláudia.
Yeah, indeed, the cost of living has been one of the reasons of unrest in many places, no Gen Z and so on, but also one of the main flags that raised by politicians overall. The affordability gaps in terms of housing, they are now global and historical, according to the IMF.
Yeah.
And from one end, we do have shortage because, as I said, people are coming and we need houses. But also what happens is that in many places we have a mismatch. We do have houses, but the people don't have the money to buy or rent. They cannot afford, right? And this is the irony of the times that we are living in.
Dr. Abdulla, I want to give you the last word.
Different answer, but I'm sure you like it. Inflation is a fact of life. We need to design systems that are resilient enough to deal with inflation and maintain the minimum quality of service we require to provide to our people. I guess the way I would look at it and maybe think about it, because I haven't thought about it before, is to have this full cycle end-to-end governance system that makes sure that we deliver enough buffers and resilience in the system, because only governments can deliver this for their people. I would always assume that putting a strategy together will always take the financial indicators, the price indices, and the inflation predictors on the macroeconomy into consideration. And I will always appreciate the quick wins, like data value today, tokenization of information, because what will always increase value without an additional capital investment is efficiency.
Yes.
Data delivers efficiency, and if I want to close with something, it's this. The most cost competitive watt of power, kilogram product, drop of water is what you can generate for free from your system through efficiency, not through a new asset or a new investment. So this is the only way that I will counter the argument of inflation. It will always happen.
On that brilliant note, ladies and
Thank you,
gentlemen,
Grace.
please, round of applause for my fantastic guests.